Chosen one, you were guided here not by the algorithm, not by accident, not by the restless habit of scrolling through a world that rarely says anything worth stopping for. Something in you was navigated. Something older and quieter than your conscious mind recognized this moment before you arrived in it and moved you toward it. That is not a coincidence. That is not a small thing. That is the first evidence of what this message is about. You are not a person things happen to randomly. You are a person things happen to on purpose. And today, on purpose, you were brought here. There is something that has been fought for you across distances and through seasons and in places you were never told about. Battles you did not know were happening have been happening. Forces that you cannot measure or locate have been at work on your behalf through every chapter of your life, including the chapters that felt most abandoned. You did not survive the hard seasons because you were strong enough. You survived them because something was standing with you in them. Something was filling the gap between what you had and what you needed. Something was deciding what was allowed to reach you. And today, in this moment, part of what it has been fighting for is reaching you through these words. So do not leave, not yet. Something important is being delivered. There is a reason you have always felt slightly outside of the rooms you were in, and I do not mean this as a wound. I mean it as a fact about your design. You have sat inside conversations and felt the strange sensation of participating and being present and saying the right words, and yet being somehow elsewhere, watching yourself perform the conversation from a slight distance. You have been in rooms filled with the people who are supposed to know you, family dinners and social gatherings, and the accumulated company of years of relationship, and felt a quiet that has no good name, not loneliness from the absence of people, something more specific. You have driven home from those evenings and sat in the silence of your car before going inside. Not because you had something to think through, because the car was the first honest space you had been in all evening. Because out there, in that gathering, you had been present as the version you offer when the real version is not safe to bring. And in the car, alone, you let the real version come forward for a moment. And it had questions. What would it feel like to be known without having to explain yourself first? What would it feel like to say the actual thing and have someone receive it without flinching? What would it feel like to not have to compress? Here is what I need you to understand about that feeling. It is not evidence of brokenness. It is evidence of designation. Ordinary souls do not carry that particular ache. The depth required to feel the absence of depth is not common. The capacity for real contact required to feel the pain of contact that never goes all the way through is not something everyone possesses. You have been feeling the gap between what you are capable of and what the rooms around you have been able to offer. That gap is not a flaw in you. That gap is the distance between where you are and where you are going. Because the connections that are being prepared for you, the ones that are already in motion toward your life, are being built to match what you actually carry, not the compressed version. If you have ever sat in a crowded room and felt completely alone in a way you could not explain to anyone, type the word "seen" in the comments. Not as a performance, as a declaration, because you are seen. Not by the room, by something that has always been able to see through every room you have ever been in, straight to the person behind the version you offer, and that something has not once been unsatisfied with what it found. There is a cost that being chosen extracts that no one tells you about in advance. It shows up as exhaustion of a specific kind, the kind that sleep does not fix, the kind that lives below the physical, in the layer where your sense of self is supposed to replenish, but has been running on reserve for longer than is sustainable. You are the person people call. You have always been the person people call. When things fell apart around someone else, the call came to you. When someone needed to be steadied at 2 in the morning, the presence offered was yours. When the crisis arrived in someone else's life, you showed up, even in the seasons when you were also in a crisis that no one knew about, even in the weeks when you were also underwater, even when you had nothing left and you reached past the nothing and found something anyway and gave it. This did not happen because you were weak. It happened because you were designated as someone who carries something stabilizing. Something in you was built to hold steady in conditions that make other people unsteady, and you have honored that. You have been faithful to that capacity in a way that is genuinely extraordinary. But the faithfulness has had a price, and the price is a tiredness that goes so deep that sometimes you forget what it felt like to not be tired. A depletion of the interior layer where joy lives, where your own desires are supposed to have a voice, where the question of what you need is supposed to receive an answer. That layer has been running on borrowed fuel, and no one has noticed. There is something fighting for you that knows this cost intimately, that has been watching you give from emptiness and has not been satisfied with that arrangement on your behalf. The battles being fought for you right now include the battle for your right to receive, not someday this season. The battle for your right to be the one who is steadied for once, who is called upon to bring nothing but their presence, who is allowed to sit in someone else's offering without the obligation to give anything back. That is among the things that are being arranged for you. A season of being carried instead of carrying. A season in which the strength that has served everyone else finally gets to rest while something greater bears the weight. Like this, if you know this exhaustion, if you recognized yourself in these words and felt something shift in you, some part of you that has been braced relax slightly because someone finally named what it has been holding. Like it, and let that be your declaration that you are ready to receive what is coming. Because it is coming. The season of being poured into is not a concept. It is a specific arrangement that is already in motion. Now, I am going to name the fear that lives in the quiet moments. The one you do not say out loud. You do the math. You cannot help it. Your mind keeps the accounting without being asked to. It knows your age, and it knows what you expected by now, and it knows the distance between those two things. It watches people younger than you reach things you have been reaching toward. It watches people who started later arrive somewhere sooner. And it constructs a question that is not quite envy and not quite grief, but something in between, something that sits in the chest in a way that is hard to breathe around. Did I already miss it? Is the window closed? Did the moment I was supposed to step into pass while I was busy surviving something else? The enemy of your destiny uses this question as its primary instrument against you. And it is effective precisely because it has evidence. The fear can point to your timeline and say, look at what has not happened yet. Look at how far you are from where you plan to be. Look at the years, count them. And the terrible thing is that you cannot simply dismiss the fear because it is not entirely wrong about the past. Things did not happen when you planned them. Seasons that were supposed to turn did not turn. Time did pass, and what you wanted to show for it did not arrive on schedule. But the fear is wrong about the most important thing. It is wrong about the timeline itself. The deadline you believe you have passed was never written by the authority that has been shaping your life. It was written by a world that measures people by speed and visibility, by how quickly they can produce results that fit into the categories the world has agreed to recognize. And that world cannot see what has been happening in your life at the level where your real preparation has been occurring. It cannot see the depth that has been building in the hidden seasons. You have not missed what was meant for you. Hear that not as comfort, but as fact. You are not behind the person you were supposed to become. You are not the one the clock ran out on. You are the one who is arriving right now, in this season, at exactly the moment for which the thing that has been prepared for you has been waiting. And the thing that has been prepared did not shrink while you were in the waiting. It grew. It has been matching itself to the person you were becoming in the seasons you were certain were going to waste. And what is waiting for you on the other side of this season is not the diminished version of what you once hoped for. It is the completed version of what was always intended. Type 11 in the comments right now if something in you just exhaled at reading that. If the weight of that fear shifted even slightly, type 11 as your agreement that you are releasing the verdict the timeline handed you, because the timeline was never the authority and the verdict was never final. Let me speak now about the wound that changed how you trust. You opened yourself once, maybe more than once, to someone you believed was capable of receiving what you carried. You gave the version of yourself that you keep most protected. The interior thing, the tender and genuinely loving part that you know the cost of exposing because you learned the cost young. You chose to trust in spite of that knowledge. You brought the real version of yourself into a space you believed was safe enough to hold it. And then something happened. Suddenly or slowly, it did not matter which. What happened was the same. You were left holding the absence of what you gave, and in that absence, a question was born that has been living in you ever since. The question was not about them. It became about you. Am I too much? Do I love in a way that is simply too large for the containers people actually have available? Is there something fundamental in me that makes deep connection impossible, that makes the people who get close enough to see the interior eventually need to leave it? Am I the common denominator in the losses? That question is one of the most precise weapons that can be turned against a chosen person, because it does not attack from outside. It inhabits you, it borrows your own voice, and speaks in it, and therefore sounds like truth, like sober self-assessment, like the wisdom you have accumulated through the cost of loving poorly chosen people. But it is not wisdom. It is a lie dressed in your own handwriting. What was lost in those seasons was not evidence of your deficiency. It was the completion of a clearing. Every person who could not hold what you carried was being moved out of the path of what is coming. Not because they were villains in your story, because the place you are being positioned for requires a different quality of companionship than those seasons were able to offer. The love you gave did not disappear into the absence. It built something in you, the capacity to love with that much openness, to give the real version of yourself even after the cost of giving it has been demonstrated. That is not a flaw. That is one of the most extraordinary things about you, and it is one of the specific things that has been fought for across every season that tried to close it. There is a trial you conduct against yourself that would never survive the light of day if it were turned outward. You have a record on yourself, not written anywhere that anyone else can see, but running constantly in the background, updated automatically, comprehensive in a way that would be impressive if it were applied to anything else. Every failure logged, every decision that looks different in retrospect, every moment when you were less than you expected yourself to be, every reaction when you should have responded, every word that came out wrong, every time you chose the path that seemed right and watched it lead somewhere wrong. The record is thorough. It is relentless, and it runs in the voice that sounds most like you, the internal one, which means it arrives not as accusation from outside, but as self-knowledge, as clarity about your nature, as an honest accounting of what you are. But it is not honest. It is selective. It records every failure and gives no weight to the context in which the failure occurred. It does not note the conditions you were navigating, the resources you did not have, the information that was not available to you, the weight you were already carrying when the moment arrived and you did not meet it the way you wished you had. It keeps no record of the endurance. It files no credit for the times you got back up after being knocked down so thoroughly that getting back up should not have been possible. It makes no entry for the love you continued to give in seasons when you had every reason to close. It is not an honest accounting. It is a prosecution, and you have been its defendant for years with no advocate and no appeal. Here is the truth about what that record has been missing. The things in you that have made your path harder, your sensitivity, your depth, your capacity for feeling that exceeds what the ordinary containers around you were built to hold. These are not the evidence of defect. They are the signature of what you were made from. The materials that go into something significant are not easy materials. They resist, they complicate. They require more care and more time and more heat than what goes into something ordinary, which is why your path has had more resistance than the paths of people around you who seem to move through their lives without the friction you have always experienced. It is not because something is wrong with you. It is because what is being made in you is not ordinary. Comment the word free in the comments right now. Not because you have arrived somewhere, because you are choosing to set down the prosecution, to dismiss the case, to stop rendering verdicts about yourself from evidence that was never complete, free. Let that word mean that you are finished agreeing with a record that left out the most important parts. Now, let me speak to the version of you that no one in your life has fully met. You show different faces to different rooms. You know this. There is the one who shows up to obligations, professional, appropriate, competent. The one who shows up to family, navigating the familiar dynamics, filling the familiar role. The one who shows up to friendships, present and caring and funny and relatable. And all of those versions are real. You are not being dishonest with any of them. But none of them is the whole thing. The whole thing is the version that exists in the silence. That version learned early that it was not safe to bring its full self into most rooms. Not because the world is cruel, though sometimes it was, but because most rooms are sized for something smaller than what you carry. The depth you bring creates a demand on other people that not everyone knows how to meet. The feeling you bring operates at a frequency that most people around you cannot quite tune to, and so you learned to compress, to offer the portion that fits, to bring the acceptable amount and leave the rest somewhere quiet, where it would not be a problem for anyone. You have been doing this for so long that sometimes the compression does not feel like compression anymore. It feels like you. And you have forgotten that it is not. There is a presence that has been fighting for you that sees straight through the compression to the full version. It does not need the acceptable amount. It is not made uncomfortable by the depth. It was built for the full thing, and it has been guarding the full thing through every season in which the compression felt necessary, ensuring that what you learned to hide for the sake of convenience was not lost in the hiding, ensuring that when the season came in which the full version could finally step forward, it would still be there intact, undiminished. Ready? The battles that have been fought for you have been fought specifically to protect that version, not the performance. The person you are allowed to let the full version breathe. Right here, right now, in the space of this moment, before you return to the rooms that have required the compression. Let the full version acknowledge that it is there. Let it receive these words without immediately reducing them to something more manageable, like this. If something in that landed, if something in you recognized itself and the recognition felt like relief, like permission, like someone finally saying the thing that has been true about you that you have not been allowed to say out loud. You do not have to show the world all of it today. But stop lying to yourself that the compressed version is all there is. The full version is who was chosen. And it is time it knew. I want to speak now about the thing that lives in you in the quiet moments that you have never found the right name for. It is not anxiety, although anxiety sometimes trails behind it. It is not ambition. Although ambition sometimes borrows its energy, it is something that does not belong to the categories the world offers. Something you feel most clearly in the moments of complete stillness. When the performance is off, and the noise is absent, and there is nothing to maintain, and no one to be anything for. A signal, a wordless insistence, something that says, without sound, that the picture you have been given of your life is not the whole picture, that the ceiling you have been handed is not the actual ceiling, that you were built for something that has not yet fully arrived, that the life you have been living, as genuine and as real as it is not the destination. It is the preparation. You have watched the people around you make peace with what is, settle into the ordinary architecture of getting through the days. Call that peace maturity, call it wisdom, call it the reasonable response to a world that does not always deliver what was hoped for. And you have tried to join them in that. You have reached for that peace, tried to want what you have, and call the wanting enough. But the signal does not let you rest there. Through seasons of success and seasons of failure, through relationships and their endings, through the milestone moments and the ordinary Tuesdays, through every attempt to settle into sufficiency, the signal persists. That signal is one of the most important evidences that you are appointed. Not everyone carries it. Not everyone is made for the kind of life that requires the signal, that requires the restlessness, that requires the refusal to accept the ceiling as final. The ones who carry it are the ones who have been designated for something that requires them to keep moving toward what they cannot yet see. The signal is the proof that your destination is real, and that it is ahead of you, and that the path to it is being cleared by the same forces that have been clearing everything else. The restlessness is not a disorder. The longing is not a disease. They are the instruments of a person made to arrive somewhere that most people were not made for. Type 333 if you feel that signal right now. The wordless knowing that there is more. Type 333 if you have tried to quiet it and it returned. Type 333 if somewhere in you, beneath the exhaustion and the doubt and the question of whether any of this is true, the signal is still running, because it is, and what it is pointing at is real, and the forces that have been fighting on your behalf know exactly where it is pointing and have been clearing the way to it across every season of your life. Now, I am going to tell you what has been prepared. Not as poetry, as fact. What is coming into your life is not a softened version of what you once hoped for, adjusted downward to account for the years and the losses and the evidence the fear has been accumulating. What is coming is proportional to what was built in you, and what was built in you is large. The endurance forged in the seasons of loss is not a small thing. The depth carved out by the years of isolation is not ordinary. The capacity developed in the waiting, the ability to hold steady when nothing is visible and nothing is confirming and nothing is arriving, that capacity is extraordinarily rare. And what is coming has been sized to match it. There will be people entering your life who have the capacity to receive what you carry. not the compressed version, the full thing. People for whom your depth is not too much but exactly enough. People who speak at the frequency you have always operated on but never found others operating on. These are not abstract people. They are already in motion toward your life. The meeting, when it comes, will feel less like introduction and more like recognition. There will be provision for the places where scarcity has been constraining you. The pressure that has required you to make smaller decisions than your actual capacity has been addressed at a level you cannot yet see. What will become visible is the easing space opening where space has been closed, access arriving where access has been blocked. In a direction that does not reverse, there will be clarity about the direction that has been uncertain. The questions that have circled without resolution, the decisions held in suspension because the information they required had not yet arrived. These things are resolving. The fog is thinning, and what will emerge is enough to take the next step, like this right now if you are choosing to receive what has been prepared. Not because you can see it, because you are done requiring sight as the precondition for belief, like it as your agreement with what has been fought for on your behalf. Your declaration that you are not going to let the fear of disappointment keep you from receiving what is actually yours. Someone has been trusting you with something significant for longer than you know. This trust was not placed in you because of your performance. Not because you managed yourself correctly or produced the right results or maintained the right presentation across the seasons of your life. It was placed before any of that. Before you had a history to point to, before you had demonstrated anything that the world would recognize as merit. It was placed at the level of what you carry in your original design, at the level of what you are before the world adds its layers, at the level that precedes achievement and survives failure and remains constant through every fluctuation of your external circumstances. And that trust has never been withdrawn. Not in the seasons when you made the choices that cost you, not in the seasons when you gave up temporarily and had to find your way back, not in the seasons when your faith in yourself reached its lowest point and you could not have told anyone, including yourself, what you were still doing here or why you kept going. Through all of that, the trust did not diminish. It did not cool. It did not wait for you to earn it back, because it was never contingent on your performance in the first place. Which means you have never been as abandoned in your failure as it felt. You have never been as unsupported in your lowest moments as it appeared. Something has been standing in those places with you the entire time quietly. That trust is doing something specific to you right now. It is not simply existing. It is calling something forward. Not by demand, not by pressure, not by the requirement that you perform your way into what is waiting. By pull, a gravitational movement toward the version of yourself that has been in formation through all of these seasons, the one beneath the armor that the hardest years made you build, the one that was there before the fear taught you to calculate before you reached, the one that loves without running the cost-benefit analysis first, that believes without requiring proof. First, that steps forward without waiting until the path is fully visible. That version is being summoned. Type 777 right now as your answer to that call, not as performance, as agreement. As the declaration that you are stepping forward from behind the armor, out of the protected distance you have been keeping from your own life and into the season that has been prepared. Type 777 and let it mean that you are no longer waiting until you feel ready, because ready is not a feeling. Ready is a decision, and you can make that decision right now. There is one more thing, the most important thing, and it is the thing you were least likely to find in any room you have ever been in. Your life has been mattering to things and people that you will never have a complete accounting of. You have been an instrument of stability in moments you were not aware of being instrumental. Words you spoke that you no longer remember have been carried by people for years and taken out and held in moments you will never know about. Your presence in certain rooms changed something in those rooms that had nothing to do with what you said or what you did. Just the presence itself. The frequency you operate on shifted the frequency of the room, steadied something that would otherwise have become unstable, offered an anchor to someone who needed one and never found the words to tell you. This is why what has been fighting for you has been fighting so deliberately and for so long. Because the life being protected is not only the one you are aware of living, it is the one you are living at the level of your influence, your presence, your effect on the lives that your life has touched without your knowledge. The life that matters to outcomes and people and seasons that extend far beyond the horizon of your current self-assessment. The battles have been fought at that level, at the level of what would be missing from the world if you were not in it. At the level of a purpose whose full scope you will not understand until you have arrived far enough along the path to look back. Receive this, not with the part of your mind that is already composing reasons it might not apply. With the part of you that has always known it was true, the part that has been carrying the signal, the part that refused to settle even when settling would have been easier, the part that is still here, in this moment, still reaching, still not fully closed, still willing to receive something that the fear said was not coming. That part is the chosen part. That part is who this has always been for. Like this one final time, as a choice, not a reflex. As the seal on a moment that was always going to come, because it was arranged to come, because you were guided here, because the same thing that has been fighting for you across every season of your life wanted you to hear this before the next chapter began. Type Amen. Let that word travel. Let it find the person who was supposed to receive it after you. Because the way this works is that what reaches you is never only for you, it moves through you. And the moment you received this, you became part of the arrangement by which someone else will receive it next. That is what it means to be chosen. Not to be the destination of the blessing, to be the channel through which it moves.